is Beth Foss, and I am the Director of Operations here at the CRF. I'm also a daughter carrier and mother to two grown boys that are now men. Benjamin, or Ben, is in Wilmington, Delaware, and actually he's a part of the Spark study. He's on year 5, so currently he's in Boston. He has a year 5 check, so he's not here. And I have a son, Matthew. Matt is in Nashville, gigging and trying to make money to pay back student loans. Yeah. So he is also not here. But I really actually get the opportunity here to visit and introduce Nick Peterson. Nick is actually a friend. I call you a friend. We like to joke around. We like to joke around a lot. He did a webinar with us. So if you would like to learn more, he's going to be here for the next couple of days. He has equipment. He has the technology you can try. But if you want to watch again, he is on our YouTube channel. We did a webinar. They are still up. But he was one of our first ones, so I'm a little rusty in terms of being the interviewer, but he's just fantastic, and it's nice to be able to have hands-on ability here to be able to try some of these things. So here's what I'm going to share with you about Nick. He joins us from a company called VisAbility, which serves as a distributor for Freedom Scientific, Low Vision International, and HIMS blindness products. As of February 2019, VisAbility is also a provider for Zoom Text and JAWS, which are critical computer programs for individuals who are blind or visually impaired. I already said this, but Nick joined me last year via Zoom webinar as he shared with us about the various types of devices, computer software that helps us navigate life a little more easily. So I would just encourage you, you can visit with him here, and he also will be demonstrating the products in a different room down the hall, right? I'll let you tell where that is and how you want to work it. But everybody, let's give Nick a round of applause.
So, what Beth didn't mention is that before I went into sales, can everybody hear me? In the back?
Yeah, right.
What? There's my comedian. Before I went into sales, I was a system technology instructor at the Association for the Blind, or Goodwill of the Finger Lakes here in Rochester, for 3 years. And since then, I had become a private technology consultant for the New York State Commission for the Blind. So in addition to sales, I do trainings, and I certainly know this field fairly well. So what I think we should probably do, so we can be sure to make it through the material. You can try, maybe against the computer. Is probably hold our questions. Oh, fantastic, thank you. Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah.
I think probably better if we hold our questions till the end, but we'll see how it goes as far as the time. Because we have an hour. Okay, so I think one of the questions that people tend to ask initially is, how can technology help me? Just a quick show of hands. Raise your hand if you would, if you're currently using something that you would consider to be assistive technology at your home or in your personal life. More hands going up as we wait. Okay. Assistive technology is marvelous. A little bit more about my background. I was actually doing a program at ABBI to help seniors with the mental health impact of vision loss when they asked me if I would learn to be an assistive technology instructor as well. And I quickly learned just how amazing these sorts of devices and software were. Fast forward 6 years, it's only got that much more amazing. Frequently, though, people do use assistive technology for reading, whether it be on a CCTV or a digital or electronic magnifier. Those terms are all somewhat synonymous. To be able to magnify or change the contrast of the print and then see it on a screen in front of themselves, or maybe even have the print read to them. So you just simply place the document down, it takes a picture, and it reads it to you. This can be done on a computer as well, of course. But reading is something that a lot of people I see tell me is a big priority that they really miss, and assistive technology can make that a reality for them. also cooking. So not necessarily ideal for some devices or some situations, but it is possible to safely cook. Chopping onions, maybe seeing where the dials are on your stove, that sort of thing. Thanks to assistive technology without, cutting your finger off or burning down the house. Reading mail, of course, watching television. There are devices that can do distance viewing and can enable somebody to zoom in across a room, across a parking lot, and be able to see what's happening at a distance. We'll be talking about those as well, whether they be worn on their face or held in their hands. There's a lot of different options there. Coming back?
I would absolutely.
Okay. Sure. Do what you need to do. Computers. Computers are a big thing, of course. There's a lot of software out there at this point. We're going to be talking about some of those options in a few minutes. Sure. And for work purposes. Out of curiosity, if you don't mind raising your hand again, raise your hand if you live in New York State. Okay, just a couple. For those who don't know then, if you're legally blind in New York State, the Commission for the Blind will pay for training so you can learn how to use a computer and or technology that would make that a possibility for once you get a job. It's not like, oh, I want to be a airline pilot, buy me X, Y, and Z. You have to actually have the job. But a lot of the folks I see on a regular basis are because they're wanting to work, and vision loss is proving to be a barrier to that assistive technology makes possible. And then I put workshop here too. I do know a gentleman who, now that I know only two of you are from New York State, I can probably rest assured that you do not know him, but he lives here in the Rochester area. He is deafblind, and he still works in his workshop, cutting wood, making tables, all sorts of things. It's amazing to see. I'm terrified every time I see him. And he's going to have less than 10 fingers, but he makes it work. Assistive technology makes it possible. So I thought we'd start by talking about some lower technology options. And I'm not necessarily going to stand right next to this. I probably will move around a little bit, but if you guys start not being able to hear me in the back, just raise your hand. Lower technology options, because calling something like the Amazon Echo low technology isn't really fair to the Amazon Echo. It's a pretty great device, but it is lower technology versus something that is a literal computer. But some devices that people might use in their homes would be like large print telephones. Pretty basic, they've been around for quite a while. But talking thermostats, not so much. Or devices that you can pair with the Amazon Echo or Google Home and a smart plug, making it possible to turn devices on with your voice, is definitely on the cutting edge of where technology can help us these days. Again, show of hands, who uses an Amazon Echo or Google Home in their home? Okay. You guys are pretty tech savvy. I also have a few friends, individuals I've worked with who use Roku players and have voice control with those Rokus to be able to turn on whatever they're wanting to watch. Which, of course, I mean, I'm not exactly a kid, but I do remember the days when TVs were 9 inches in black and white and 4 dials and 4 channels. It's amazing where we've come. And then, of course, optical or lens magnifiers. So you guys may have seen those before. They are lenses that create the magnification based on the curvature of the lens. But then, of course, more magnification requires a smaller and smaller lens. So to do a 5x, 6x magnifier, the lens is going to be about the size of a quarter, which is where something like an electronic magnifier or a CCTV can be much, much more advantageous. And then in terms of health, we have some options there as well. Smartwatches, talking thermometers, talking glucometers, and Cocoon's eyewears. I was looking around with you folks earlier today. I don't see too many people wearing tinted lenses. Is that something that the population is benefited from, or maybe just because we're inside and it's gloomy and about the thunderstorm out there, not so much?
Yeah, sunglasses are a big thing.
Yeah.
It does.
Tinted lenses too. Does anybody use cocoons? I think those are pretty awesome.
I had a pair.
Yeah,
Don't know what
a
they
little
are.
bit maybe.
Can you say what they are?
Yeah, what are they?
They're like wraparound lenses intended to block out any kind of peripheral light as well.
Okay.
They're not particularly expensive, and typically they're something you can get from a low vision doctor or catalogs. I mentioned LS&S and Maxi Aids. Those are the local catalogs here in New York State, but I'm sure depending on where you are, there's catalogs or websites where you can find things like that. And cocoons are, as you might expect, spelled. Just to make sure we don't run too fast here. Any questions so far? I should mention, in-home adaptations to vision loss would be a different type of professional than myself. Those would be like rehabilitation teachers. And the table just outside on the right side, the table next to mine as you head past where the coffee shop is my former colleagues of Goodwill of the Finger Lakes. And one of them, if I'm not mistaken, is she an RT or O&M? Well, they would be knowledgeable on the subject. If you wanted to ask about things like say whens or a little mechanism that you can put in your coffee mug to alert you when you're getting close to the top of the lip so you don't pour coffee all over the counter. That's that type of field that would be best suited to answer those questions. No questions? Okay. Well, if they come to you while we're chatting, we'll certainly get to that. Next, we're going to move into my wheelhouse. So, assistive technology applications. So, thanks to the invent of smartphones, we have a lot of really wonderful applications that hopefully people are using or will be using after today. Some of them, or most of them I suppose, are actually free and built into your smartphone already. Somebody asked me earlier today, I don't know if he's in the room now. Somebody asked me earlier today if I prefer Apple or Android, and which version of Apple, if I do indeed prefer Apple, as far as a recommendation for a smartphone for an individual with vision loss. And certainly Apple has much better native software built into it than Android, I would say. I don't work for Apple, but VoiceOver alone is infinitely better than TalkBack. So if you have more advanced vision loss and magnification and contrast is no longer going to be helpful to you, VoiceOver is going to be your best friend because it makes it possible for an individual who has no sight whatsoever to use an iPhone or an iPad for that matter. It's also available on a Mac, but we'll get to that in a minute. And Seeing AI, let's make sure I enunciate, has been around for 4 or 5 years now that I've been aware of it. It's kind of an unusual software because it's built by Microsoft, of all things, but it's only available on Apple. If you haven't tried it and you have an Apple device, it is free. I would strongly recommend it. I would caution you, though, that if you use the person feature of the Seeing AI and it estimates you're older than you are, don't come looking for me. I didn't design the software. I'm sorry. I did have one situation where I was working with a colleague. And I used to work at Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, like I mentioned, and most of my colleagues were female. And we're passing the app around, and it's consistently estimating that my colleagues are 5 or 10 years younger than they actually were, as they announced to me after the fact. And then it said that my friend Todd, who was probably 45, was a 62-year-old woman. I felt like I had to watch Todd afterwards to make sure he wasn't going to hurt himself. But Seeing AI is a fantastic device, or fantastic application, because in addition to being able to identify known people, so you can program people's faces into it, it can also, like I said, estimate an individual's age. So I routinely come up as being 38, 39 years old in the app, which is great because I am 38, go figure. But it can also read to you short text or documents. It can identify color, and perhaps most interesting, it is I believe, this is still true, the only software I've ever seen that can read handwriting. Now it's not 100%, but considering it can take a swing at handwriting, whereas otherwise, where does that leave you? It's really fantastic. And if you've never used Seeing AI before and you do use VoiceOver, the two are compatible. So you can use Seeing AI with VoiceOver and be able to do a bunch of things you weren't able to do before. As far as GPS, people ask me about this sometimes. There's something called Blind Square, which I believe there is an expense to, but most users tell me that it's well worth it. And then Apple also has built into it Zoom and Magnifier, both of which are free. So if you are using an iPhone, you should be using those things. If you need magnification, or even the ability to magnify things around you. And then Android, which is unfortunately kind of like lost in the rain to some extent, it has TalkBack, which is the built-in accessibility option for individuals who have more advanced vision loss. I've turned TalkBack on to my phone once or twice and been unable to turn it off, so I don't demonstrate that to people. But it is free, and if you have an Android phone, it may work for you. AI Polyvision is, I would say, the closest thing I have found to Seeing AI. Corey, it's been a couple of years. Have you found anything better with? No?
Nope.
Yeah, it's regrettably a lot of the things or a lot of the features with AI Polyvision you have to pay for. So that really kind of puts a damper on things. And I recently discovered something called Lazarillo, which is the GPS program on Androids as well. And then moving on, there are some applications that are available on both, such as Be My Eyes and Ira. And I'll mention both of those together because they're pretty similar. Be My Eyes actually connects you in real time to volunteers from around the world who will look through the camera in your phone or whatever device you're using and can identify what you're looking at, can give you, the bread is 20 feet down on the left, or can basically potentially read to you as well. That being said, it is a volunteer service, and I've heard from multiple people who had volunteered for the service that they have been active with Be My Eyes for months at a time and never get a request because it just isn't used as well as it should be. Maybe there's just a lot more volunteers than there are users in the world, but it is something to consider if you're finding that you're needing that type of assistance. And then IRA, A-I-R-A, is kind of the professional version of Be My Eyes. Here in Rochester, we have Wegmans, of course, and at Wegmans, it's free to use IRA. At the airport, it's free to use IRA. Other public places, it's free to use. But if you're going to pay for it out of your pocket, it can be pretty pricey. So I don't know too many people who don't work for IRA who do use it privately like that. But it does connect you in real time with a professional describer that, you know, if you're at the grocery store, other than Wegmans, or even Wegmans, of course, and you're looking for a box of Total cereal, it's 20 feet down on your right, move up, there it is right there. So. But it's a nice feature, and again, something that we definitely wouldn't have had 10 years ago. Also, we have SuperSense available on both. It's kind of an interesting one. It is free. It gives you the possibility to read, explore, or find things. And as far as find things, that includes people, a seat, doors, stairs, and trash cans. What could be less essential than those things. And again, that's free to try if you are finding that you are in need of something like that. And then there's TapTapC and KNFB Reader. I don't know too many people who still use KNFB Reader. I think it's kind of phased out, especially because it does more or less the same things that Seeing AI does. And Seeing AI is free, so it's a pretty easy decision there. Any questions? Am I losing you guys?
No, you're good.
No? Doing okay?
Yeah.
We can make it another 10 degrees colder in here.
Yeah.
Don't make me.
I'm good with that.
All I need to do is put up the signal. It gets real cold. Alright, so software. So here I'm talking about device or software rather that would be use on a computer. And traditionally, of course, computers have software that would enable magnification, whether it be a Mac or a Windows computer. Just out of curiosity, does anybody need me to mention what the difference is between a Mac and a Windows computer? Quick story, if I may. So years ago, when I was working at AVVI, I was training different people on how to use computers. People would come in and they wanted to get a job using a computer, so they needed training. I had this one gentleman who came in who told me he wanted to be a computer programmer. I said, okay, how much experience do you have with a computer? Oh, none. Computers were women's work when I was in school. I said, great, computer programmer, huh? Okay. So I sat him down to fill out some paperwork, and even though I had some CCTVs to enable him to enlarge the print or change the contrast, he did it with no assistance whatsoever, because even though he had poor field of view, he had good visual acuity, so he was able to do it without any kind of assistance. That being said, he filled out the paperwork, and then I sat him down in front of the keyboard to do the dreaded readiness evaluation that the New York State Commission for the Blind feels people need to feedback, that good word, need to do to identify what sort of assistance they need. And so tell them I'm going to have you do a typing test, but first, please type your name. Okay, press enter, please. Okay, see somebody smile. You couldn't possibly believe what I'm about to say. So he's staring at the keyboard, high contrast, large print. I know he can see because what he's done so far. Staring at the keyboard. Minutes go by. Is there a problem? Well, yeah. I see enter, but where's the please key? We worked together for probably 3 weeks before he decided, you know what, if you're not going to just give me a free computer, I'm not going to commit. That being said, there's no shame if you're not familiar with computers. I know, if you went to school in decades past, computers weren't readily available, of course. But for a Windows computer, which would be a PC, Windows Magnifier is built into the computer. All you need to do is press Windows key and the plus, yes, and or go to the Ease of Access Center, and you can activate the Windows Magnifier. It's free, so it's nice in that regard. Regrettably, the downside of it is that you get very little control over the degree of magnification. So it goes from 1 to 1.5 to 2 to 2.5 to, no, I'm sorry, what am I saying? It goes from 100% to 200% to 300%, 400%, et cetera, et cetera. It gets very big very quickly, and the clarity suffers because of it. But if you need magnification, it may be a good start. You can, of course, also change the contrast and that sort of thing. But Zoom Text is the software that I would recommend if individuals were finding that they needed more control or more features than Windows Magnifier. Zoom Text is available as a free 45-minute download now. If you are using a Windows computer, you can download it for free for 45 minutes and try it out. And if you want to keep using it for 45 minutes at a time, that's your option. You just need to eventually, after those 45 minutes, restart your computer, and you have another 45 minutes. It's not ideal, but it's, if that's what you need, that gives you that option. Or Zoom Text Fusion, I'll talk about in just a moment. As far as screen readers go, there's NVDA, which is free. But most people tend to prefer, in my experience anyway, JAWS for a Windows computer because it's more capable and they get more control over the computer. JAWS is not particularly easy to learn, but if you're inclined, there are all sorts of YouTube videos and other things like that that might be able to help you out. And VoiceOver, much like an Apple phone, VoiceOver is available on an Apple computer for free and can make it possible for an individual who's totally blind to use a Mac computer. That being said, ZoomText Fusion is a combination between ZoomText to change contrast, change the magnification, but also has the screen reader of JAWS built into it, and it's enormously helpful in that regard. And then there's also Dragon Naturally Speaking, which actually enables people to control the computer and or dictate to it. So if you wanted to open a file, Windows open file, plans for the summer, whatever, and Dragon would enable you to do that. OpenBook is software that enables people to scan a document into a computer without changing the format of the document, but also gives a lot of options in terms of how the document is edited once it is on the computer. And then finally is a Braille translation software. So individuals who are using Braille can actually print to a Braille printer called an embosser using Duxbury software. I understand this is not a particularly common feature for assistive technology in this population. Not a lot of Braille users out there. Is that correct? Any Braille users? Why are you guys missing out? Any questions on software?
What's the relative cost of the Fusion software?
It depends.
The question,
I
please.
believe-
Sorry, what's the relative
No,
cost?
not you.
Oh yes, she wants me to repeat what you said. What's the relative cost of the Fusion software? Did I get that correctly?
Yes.
I believe it's around $1,800. So it's expensive, but it's a lot of people would say the best software going for individuals with vision loss. If you wanted to try it out, that is also available for a free 45-minute download. And if you got what they call an SMA or a service maintenance agreement, you can get the next 2 versions of the software for like $200 total, $250 total, whatever it is. So if you do end up, goes for ZoomText and JAWS also, if anybody is to purchase that software, I would strongly recommend investing a few $100s and get the next few versions of the software also, just to make sure you're up to date. Yes?
Can you comment on institutional licenses? Are they offered? How could they work with different employers?
Yeah, you can definitely get a group license. The question was, can I comment on institutional licenses? As it is, VisAbility, the company that I now work for, is the exclusive providers for ZoomText, JAWS, and ZoomText Fusion in New York State. And I know we do get some requests for group licenses. It does decrease the cost per license potentially, but they're nowhere near as common as individuals getting just a single license. They also, I should mention that when you get a license for something like ZoomText, it gives you 3 uses of that license. So you can have it on 3 computers simultaneously. So individuals who are working in an office but have a laptop at home and maybe even a 3rd computer can use all 3 simultaneously. Yes?
And often, isn't it true that the state or an employer will purchase those things?
Yeah, so if you're legally blind, and I'm speaking mainly here about New York State, because while I do some work in Pennsylvania, I'm not as familiar with how they do things there. And if you're from Tennessee, things could be completely different there as far as I know. But if you, in New York State, if you're legally blind and have a job that you need accommodations for, the state either pays for those accommodations or basically leans on your employer to provide them. So if you are working in a call center and you need something like ZoomText, that shouldn't be a problem at all. Does that answer your question? Right up front here. What do you got?
How much is JAWS and why not just get JAWS?
So some people need that magnification and contrast options that ZoomText provides. JAWS is significantly less expensive because it doesn't have as many bells and whistles perhaps. But I don't have the pricing here in front of me. And if I speak, I'm sure I'll be wrong. But it's more like $1,000 as opposed to the $1,800. Sure. Let's move on. Alright, so let's talk about hardware. Because I would imagine at least some people are interested in hearing about hardware. So I brought some samples just as a starting point. But as far as I'm concerned, there's basically 5 different breeds of assistive software. There's Braille displays and Braille note takers. And this is my friend the Taptillo. It's just, I think, just very fun. The gentleman who was setting up the audio in here earlier referred to my devices as toys, and I told him he didn't know how right he was about that, because this is very much a toy. I have a 7-year-old daughter at home who I can't get to stop playing with this device because she thinks it's amazing. That being said, you'll see why. Provided it's going to cooperate. I don't want to spend long on this, but I just think it's too fun to miss. So, what this is a Braille learning system. It has Braille output and individual tiles for Braille input. And what I've done is connected it to my smartphone, and it's asking me to Braille out the word cat. And you might have heard it, it actually just meowed at me. Now it's going to ask me to Braille out the word dog. Dog. I mean, how fun is that? Braille displays and Braille note takers, though, do some really wonderful things as well. A Braille display is basically a Braille keyboard, which is not what this is. And a Braille note taker is a Braille computer. So on a Braille note taker, you can send and receive email, you can surf the web, you can do anything on a Braille note taker that an individual would be able to do on a computer. They're amazing and they're expensive. Moving on, there's portables and transportables. So I remember when I started with assistive technology 6 years ago, everything weighed 40 pounds, seemingly, and everything was the size of half of one of these tables. That's very much an over-exaggeration, but we do have some really fantastic 5-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch screens that can go in your pocket and you can pull out and read a menu at a restaurant, find room number 240 by holding it up to the signs outside the rooms, reading. They're just really fantastic for that sort of use. Of course, we can change the contrast. You can change the magnification. You can actually do something called turning on a reading line with almost any CCTV at this point, where the horizontal line will go across the screen so that as you're moving the device along the page, it helps you stay on the same line of print. And a lot of people find that to be helpful, especially if you have issues with your eyes fluttering or being problematic in that regard. But this is the Explorer 5. And like I said, I would consider this to be portable because it is a 5-inch screen and it fits in my pocket. Yes?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Does that read to you then, like a CCTV?
So a CCTV doesn't always read to you.
Oh, that's right.
The question was, does this read to me like a CCTV? What it does is it changes the contrast, changes the magnification level. Some CCTVs have the capability of reading to you also. That's called OCR, or optical character recognition. And yes, I told my friend, was it Daryl back there earlier, that there is a test later, so make sure you're paying attention. Optical character recognition is the capability of a CCTV to read to you, in addition to, some of them anyway, displaying on the screen what the camera is seeing. This is a 5-inch screen. I have never seen a 5-inch screen that has the capability of reading to you that starts at maybe a 6-inch screen. Some of them 10-inch, 24-inch, etc., etc. But this would be, like I said, a portable device. We also have, or there are also, transportable devices. So this is going to get significantly more sophisticated very quickly here. But this device is transportable. And I'll set it right here, I think. It costs a lot of money and I don't feel like breaking it. But this actually has a distance camera that's plugged into it right now. But the device folds up. It's Microsoft Surface-based CCTV. So the device is this. This weighs 5 pounds and is a Windows 10 computer. It also does full page OCR, has a distance camera. The point is, though,
Sorry,
that
what's OCR?
OCR is optical character recognition. So basically, it's the ability for the camera to pick up the individual letters and words and read them to you. Sure. There are dozens of dozens of portable devices. These are just a couple that I felt like highlighting. So a big difference between the two that I would consider, aside from the size, would be the ability to write underneath there. And that, in a minute, we're going to be talking about some considerations if you decide that you do want to get a assistive technology device. There's considerations that should go into the decision as far as what device would be best for you. And if you're finding that you do need the ability to write under a screen, or do your nails, or X, Y, and Z, somebody left their glasses over here, the table behind you. A transportable device would give you that option, whereas I would say a portable device would not. So if that's something that's portable, or rather if that's something that's important to you, that option is available. Yeah?
So you know, I can clip my nails if I have one of those.
Yes, you can clip your nails if you have one of those. Or you can do your nails if that's something that you feel like you're missing out on.
I am, I have to use a file now.
Or, people will use these sorts of devices for playing cards, or looking at pictures of family members, or looking at smartphones. There's any number of different applications if you are dealing with vision loss for these sorts of devices. They're cheating cards. Yeah, the distance camera. Good lord, you could be at the other side of the parking lot on a headset. He's got a full house, fold.
You can't play cards with anyone in this room now.
I'm gonna set that down for a moment. That's my phone. Feel bad for that. So a desktop CCTV, as the name suggests, would be substantially larger. This one here that I just moved forward is a 16-inch CCTV. 16, good lord. But they can be 24 inches, they can be 20 inches, they can weigh 60 pounds. This one here weighs 15, so I was willing to move it around. But like any CCTV, like I mentioned, we can change the contrast, we can change the magnification, you can turn on the reading line. This one happens to have a distance camera built into it, although it's not a fully articulating head, although you can maybe see me or see this half of the room. Just one of the features that you might expect with a larger CCTV. Another fun feature about this one that is definitely worth mentioning is that it is an Android operating system. So some CCTVs now are kind of a dual-use device. In addition to changing the contrast and magnification of a document, we can have the device read us the document via the camera feature. Or, because like I said, this is an Android operating system, I can go on Google Chrome and I can send and receive emails, I can surf the web, I can do probably 90% of the things you'd be able to do on a computer on this device. And at the end of the day, I picked it up already.
Sorry, this can be connected to a keyboard?
Yeah, we have Bluetooth. Bluetooth headphones, headphone jack. I find a lot of students really like this device because it gives them that dual functionality, or the previous device. It's portable, but I have a device on the table out there that is a 24-inch screen that weighs probably 35 pounds. So if you find that you're not at all interested in portability, you want something that would enable you to sit at your desk and read and just flip the pages. If you still have the vision that would enable you to do that, you'd have that option there with something like that. And then wearables. So I don't carry any wearables, and the reason for that is I've never really been impressed with where wearables are at this point. I think it's probably the next kind of frontier in terms of what assistive technology can do. One in particular that I do like, it would be the Orcam MyEye. If you've ever heard of that or maybe seen it on Dr. Phil, that device is small, unlike most wearable devices at this point. And it's about the size of a chapstick tube. And it connects via a magnet to a bracket you put on your glasses, and then it reads to you. It doesn't do anything to enhance your vision, but it does read to you and can identify people and can identify colors and things like that. That makes it pretty handy. But I found when I was selling it that a lot of people ended up being disappointed because it didn't enhance their vision. I think a lot of people were looking for that, and it does not do that. But there are dozens of other wearable CCTVs out there at this point. Some of them look like they're VR headsets, and you can't walk around because you don't have any peripheral vision and you fall and break your neck if you weren't careful. Some of them are more like glasses, but I feel like we're not quite there yet. Either the field of view is too small or the clarity suffers, or I would imagine within the next 3 or 4 years, I would hope that we'll be there. Now's a good time to mention, I was going to go to the National Assistive Technology Conference in Florida this past February. I was going to suffer for you guys and go down to Florida in February to get away from Rochester winter. and regrettably with the pandemic, I didn't go. But I did look online to see what sort of demonstrations, what sort of devices were there that I might have missed out on, and regrettably there wasn't anything that was earth-shattering. I do remember the first time I went, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was amazing. So things are coming. I know there, from what I've heard anyway, there's a lot of hope in terms of medicine and other alternative therapies. But I'm hoping that assistive technology is right there as well as things move forward for all of us. And then readers, to change the tone altogether. So if you are at the point where a device changing the magnification or changing the contrast is no longer helpful to you, a reader might be a great choice. Now I know some people might say, well, seeing AI can do that for me already. That's true, but this is going to be a lot easier to use than that. So this is called the Lyriq, L-Y-R-I-Q, and this is a new device created by the originator of the iPal Solo, which was the industry standard for quite a while in terms of readers. And the wonderful thing about this device, maybe you want to help me out with this. RJ, is it? Are you RJ?
Me, Sheldon.
Sheldon.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and set that piece of paper down.
Okay.
Just like this, and with your hands if you would. And that's all you have to do. It's going to take a picture and it's going to read it to us.
Lyriq is an electronic text
And we
speech
have-
device for people who are blind.
We have tactile buttons around the machine, so you can pause it, you can change the speech rate, you can go back. Very easy to use. So if you're feeling like, reading your mail or reading the newspaper is something that you want to be able to do still, this might be able to help you with that.
Flash will be blind.
Did it? Sorry. That sounds like a trap. But you saw the flash though, huh?
Yeah.
There you go.
It does
But
read
again,
it.
readers come in all different shapes and sizes. The point here is to point out to you that there are these different variety of devices out there at this point. And certainly, if you're in the market for something, there may be something to be helped that can help you with that.
So how much is that?
That one is around $1,700. It's portable, obviously. It's battery powered. Any questions before we move on? Looks like we only have about 10 minutes. How did that? Yes.
the lyric device, does that read handwriting like you're talking about the Seeing AI does?
No, it does not. No, not yet anyway. Yes.
Does the lyric device, you put a book under that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice thing about it is it doesn't matter what orientation you put the page, whether it be vertical or either side horizontal or upside down, although it will tell you no text found if you put it upside down. Yes.
Do these
I'm
readers?
sorry. The last question was, can you read a book with it? I failed again. What was your question back there?
I was just going to ask if these readers are mainly for, do they mainly cover the English language, or do they cover, across languages as well?
So, the question is, does the reader read in multiple languages? Yes. So, the desktop unit that I put up here reads in 55 different languages. The lyric, I think it's more like 30. I have one out there on my table that reads in more like 60. So there's a lot of different language capability. They don't translate though, worth mentioning. So if your document is in Spanish, it's not going to read it in English, but you can certainly read it in Spanish. Any other questions? Okay, I'm certainly, is this, yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to make sure to talk about these sort of considerations for finding the right device. Of course, first and foremost, cost is a consideration. And people tell me all the time that the prices are too high. And indeed, some of them are. They're set by the manufacturers, but a lot of research and engineering has gone into all these devices. It may be possible to get them either used or at a discount from a vendor, and or at a discount at a show or something like that. Screen size and clarity is certainly a consideration. I would suggest if you are in a position to get a used device at some point, you want to make sure that it is high definition. If it's not high definition, you're going to end up with what I call streaking. If you move the page under the camera, it actually creates like trails. High definition is certainly the way to go. So definitely something you should be sure that you're getting. Portability, as I mentioned a couple times, may be important for some folks, maybe not for some. OCR means what? He left before I got a chance to ask him. Daryl left too. Who knows what OCR means? Optical character recognition. Everybody fails. Distance viewing. It is possible for some devices to see a TV, whether it be wearable or a device that has an external camera, to position the device towards the TV, or even some wearables, they can get a TV signal inside the headset and potentially be able to see it better in that regard. But distance viewing is something that's come a long way in the last few years. I mentioned the ability to write underneath is very important, of course, for some folks. Computer functions, I talked about that. Battery life, or no battery. And then a return policy or warranty. Most high technology devices these days comes with a 2-year warranty, although some do 3 years, some do 1. If you are to purchase something like that from somebody at some point, I would say make sure you know what the policy is. It could certainly save you a lot of money if something happens to the device and you don't have to pay for it out of pocket to get it fixed. Any questions on these? Control this thing. I knew we should turn the temperature down. Talked about the tab already, talked about the reveal already, the lyric. No questions. I do have cards. If you want to take one with yourself and call me in a month if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Not I'm person, but my table out there, I have some. And I have some that are Braille too, if any of you decide that you do want to learn Braille and pick it up that way. But yeah, it's a really fascinating field, assistive technology, and I'm curious to see where we're going to be in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years for for what it's worth, I love it, if you can't tell, and I'm hoping to be doing this for the rest of my life, so maybe I'll see you guys again at some point down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This part-
So any other questions?
This probably isn't your expertise, but do you know anything about like the mobility stuff, like the talking canes and things like that?
Very little. That is an orientation and mobility specialist question. I do know, I've seen some applications or some devices like a buzz clip that you can actually clip on your chest and it buzzes if you get too close to something. Or there are devices you can clip onto your cane that will buzz if you are, I don't know if this is actually ever went to market, but something that we were trying out at the Association for the Blind several years ago that actually sends a signal kind of like up around your shoulder height, so that if you're walking along and there's a branch that you're not going to detect with your cane, it would alert you to that branch. That might be a question to ask the folks at Goodwill at the Finger Lakes out there. And again, that question was, what do I know about devices to help with canes? Failed. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. My company actually sells that one. We have a private license or exclusive rights to sell it in New York State. What's that? Like I said, I believe it's around $1,700. There is an optional keypad with it without it. Oh, it's not in my back pocket anymore, but this is around, and I'll be honest, regrettably, I can't seem to memorize the prices because they always go up these days.
What's the difference between that and seeing AI?
So seeing AI isn't going to enable you to change the contrast, isn't going to enable you to change the magnification. Go ahead and set it down. There you go, and you can slide it around. So the upper right corner enables you to increase the magnification. You can hold it in one hand to see things maybe at more of a distance, but I mean, you're welcome to give it a shot. Yeah. Possible. He's not here. Well, we can talk about it in a minute if you like. Any other questions? You look like you have a question. No? Just happy? Happy that it's not 90 degrees and humid in here. I think I saw it's supposed to thunderstorm today too. Welcome to Rochester. Okay. Well, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.